All right. The great Evan Christopher on clarinet. And a really wonderful guitar player that I've been seeing online, playing with Frank Raniolo a lot. You know, Vinny Raniolo. Is that what it's called?
Raniolo. Yeah, just
Raniolo,
use
yeah.
your hands.
Yeah, it's an Italian thing, so you have to use your hands. You know? Anyway, they're gonna talk about a variety of things, and one of the things that Evan talked about was how to work as opposed to play jazz. You know, does that mean making a living in jazz? Or?
It doesn't necessarily mean making a living.
Right, that could be quite a challenge.
Well, because that's a very subjective thing. Making a living is subjective, right? I mean, you could decide that the way you want to make a living is to play small clubs where people will put money in a tip jar and play in the street. It doesn't matter. So making a living doesn't really have anything to do with anything, because you know, there are people that have had great careers and played festivals, and they just decided that even that wasn't a living to them. So we're not really talking about that. We can talk about some of those things in the context of just professionalism and what will be expected of you. Let's just say that Professor Maskowski there is the only person who's ever asked me for proof that I had a degree, for proof that I had a BA, so that I could be an adjunct faculty member here in 2008 to 2009, or however long it was. He's the only person who's ever asked me about the degree. So,
is that true? Or is that fake news?
No one else is caring.
All right.
Now, some places that you play, like schools and stuff, they might ask for a background check, but that's another story. But primarily, what I think what Vinny has to offer is a huge amount of expertise as a rhythm section player, but also is just, you know, he's as famous for being a great, reliable accompanist as he is, you know, a solo artist. And that's no small thing, because I mean, there are a lot of people out there who are solo artists, but you don't really see them. You know, they didn't go up paying their dues and cutting their teeth working with other people, because, you know, frankly, that part of that continuum is gone now, because in the musicians of the canon, a lot of them have already passed away, right? And it takes younger musicians, it takes even the generation after that, the generation after Miles and Train and Monk, you know, it becomes kind of subjective about who is now in the canon, you know. Yeah, maybe Joe Lovano is now in the canon, right? You know what I mean? It just depends, but maybe Pat Metheny's in the canon, so to speak. Herbie Hancock's, you know, he's in the canon for certain things, but maybe. So it's become a little more subjective, because the people who created the protocols and the vocabulary for the music marketed as jazz since 1917, you know, most of them are gone. But being an accompanist, I mean, there's definitely certain things that are expected of you, and I wanted to give Vinny the opportunity to talk a little bit about his career and about you know, when it was that he figured out, you know, what are the things that he has to know, you know, or what are the things that he feels that people have to know. And on us here, we might even get a little demonstration about, you know, just simulate what happens on a gig sometimes and what people are going to ask you to do, and some quick ways and some quick tricks to kind of make sure that you can do these things quickly without someone throwing music in front of you. So Vinny's going to start. He's just going to tell you a little bit about how he started, and especially with particular attention to when he started his professional career and some of the things that he quickly did. You know, at the outset of his professional career, that made him that made his phone ring more often. So.
Hello, everybody. I'm Vinny Raniolo, and so I started my professional career when I was 16. So I started to play guitar when I was 13, and I was obsessed. So I just started practicing and learning tunes. I actually wasn't really into jazz at that point when I first started. I listened to Joe Pass and Herb Ellis and Bucky Pizzarelli and his son John Pizzarelli and Les Paul, and then I want to be able to do that. So I went to I really looked into doing this, it's called the BOCES program, and so half a day during high school I would go to music school, and there I met people that I could play with. And then I started gigging at 16 years old, going to like restaurants, going everywhere that I could. And I just wanted to play. I didn't even care about the money. I just wanted to go and play. So, and you have to learn a lot of songs. So I was really interested in learning songs. And then when I met Bucky Pizzarelli a few years later, does everybody know who Bucky Pizzarelli is? He's a living legend. He played with everybody, Benny Goodman. I mean, he would invite Benny Goodman over on Sundays. They'd have pasta and jam sessions. You know, and that's big. He played with Frank Sinatra. He played for 3 presidents. And he has been on so many recordings. I mean, even recordings that you wouldn't even realize it was him, like Bully Wooly and Roberta Flack's Killing Me Softly and stuff like that. He was, you know, he would hang with Tony Mottola and hang with Barney Kessel and those guys. They would share a locker together, because that was back in the days when the recording session was like, you know, you'd go to the local 802 and they would just say, hey, you know, who wants a recording session? They'd record 5 sessions a day. It was really amazing. But so he gave me some great advice. He said, if you want to work a lot in this business, learn how to play rhythm guitar. Like really learn how to play rhythm guitar. Learn how to accompany. And then that's when I really started to work. People started calling me because they knew that I was one of the few people that really wanted to learn the art of rhythm guitar, because it is kind of a dying art form. Not many people are interested in it. Everybody wants to play all these notes and play all these solos and all these hit voicings and stuff like that, which is great. It's awesome to learn that stuff. I'm a total music nerd. I love learning the theory. I love learning different shapes and patterns and stuff. But really, what people want to hear is just... That's what people want to play to. You know, it's just nice, simple rhythm. You know, nice and light. I mean, I could dig into. You know, dynamics, I think, is really important. You know, I don't like a lot of effects. You know, I like to keep it, try to get the purest guitar sound that I possibly can. I don't even put reverb on there. And
Let's go back a minute. Let's get a little bit of a timeline. How old were you when you met Buck and he basically gave you that advice or that wisdom?
I met him when I was about 20. So I went to college and I was just about leaving college. I actually took a leave of absence. I was playing with Frank Vignola at the time. So that's how I met Bucky, was through playing with Frank. And yeah, I was accompanying him and I was playing the arrangement, you know, but in terms of like rhythm guitar, I wasn't really as solid of a rhythm guitar player, you know, I was just playing.
Let's talk about, not in terms of the right or wrong way, let's just talk about the more, maybe a better way to say it would be the more convincing way. Tell us a few things that happened on early gigs that gave you, that let you know whether you were playing rhythm guitar more convincingly. What things did you work on? What things did you work on right away? What would you say to people now who just say, okay, you know what? I think I am gonna get the rhythm guitar thing under my belt. And then also give us an idea about work-wise as you started being a working professional. The ratio of things, opportunities that you ended up having to play rhythm guitar versus other things. Just talk a little bit about what that balance in your early career was like.
Well, when I first started noticing that people were enjoying what I was doing, was, of course, I was getting a lot more calls. People would like really tell me like, wow, the rhythm section really feels good. It's really swinging. You know, especially playing with other chordal players, like playing with other guitar players and other piano players. Piano players are notorious for hating to play with guitar players. And you know, in the beginning, I would play with the piano player. Even before I even played the first note, the piano was like, all right, I'll lay out of this one. You know, like. But then I started to do just nice light rhythms. So the piano player, I'm not getting in the way of anybody. I'm not playing these big chords. The bass player's not getting upset with me. You know, because when you play, when you're in a band, you know, people tend to get upset at the guitar player a lot. You know. But
let's talk more specifically about what things might upset the rhythm section and what things did you gravitate towards that seemed to be real specific.
Yeah, like this really upsets people. you know, even the chord grips that you first learn, you know, like this might even, you know, because now you got the bass in there. So I started to maybe lighten up, and also with my technique, the way that I strum, I would lighten up. I would aim more for the middle notes and just stick to like the most important notes. I learned a lot about theory and guide tones and what are the most important notes of the chord. Like you don't need all the sharp 11s and flat 9s and all that stuff when you're playing rhythm guitar. Even when you look at a chart and you see B flat 7, sharp 11, 13, flat 9, just play B flat 7. You only really need to play A flat and maybe D. That's, you know, so, you know, Freddie Green, he just play one note.
How many notes did you just hear? That was a one-note chord. All right, like consecutive notes, but those are one-note chords. So, and how did you get him to that idea? Because, I mean, you can't hear Freddie Green that well on recordings.
But you feel it.
You feel it. And you didn't get to meet him in person. So where did you kind of, where did you start to shed the 1 and 2 note chords and the interior lines?
When I met Bucky and Frank, and so Bucky Pizzarelli and Frank Vignola would include me in a lot of music. I got a lot of opportunity, you know, because they saw that I was really interested and I really had the drive to play this music. So they would include me in these guitar trios. You know, we would go all around the country and play trio, and I would, you know, just
so brief commercial. Vinny is one of the guitarists who has done a really good job about having letting students access the pedagogy about what he's talking about, and that's available online.
Yeah.
Right? Jazz at Lincoln Center has done some videos with James Chirillo on this subject. And so there are resources out there for you because, you know, Bucky's 91. Great if you can meet him, you know, as soon as possible. But he might not be around forever. So some of this knowledge basically is being handed down to people like Vinny. And that's just how life is. So I'm very happy if you get to meet Bucky, and take a lesson. But there are resources for you to learn how to do these things. Let's talk about repertoire. And at what point did you? What point was it clear to you that you needed to know more tunes or certain tunes? Or I mean, how did your repertoire evolve, or your vocabulary for Now let's say you've got the skill, you know what you're doing, you've got the comping thing figured out so that you're not pissing off the bass player, you're not pissing off the piano player, everybody's happy with what you're doing, time is solid. But now let's talk about repertoire for a minute.
Well, that comes, you know, everything that I practiced was for a gig, or I've learned through a gig. Like I would try to play with as many different musicians, as many different groups as I possibly could. So I would show up to these gigs, and they would call a couple tunes, and they're like, oh, let's play this one. Sorry, I don't know it. And oh, how about this one? Sorry, I don't know it. And how about this one? Oh, okay, finally, we got one. And I hated that. That was so embarrassing. So then I would, at the end of that set, I would write down all the names of the tunes that they called that I didn't know, and then I'd go home and I'd learn it. And there's so many resources. You could go on YouTube, go Spotify. I know musicians hate Spotify because they only pay like 0.0001 cents per stream, but it's a great resource actually because you can choose type in the name of the song, and so many different versions come up. So you can learn all the different versions and choose the one that you feel is right. And all the books and everything like that, all the real books. But yeah, so that's how I would start to, you know, gain my repertoire. And if there's somebody that I wanted to play with, I would check them out. I would hear what they like to play, and I'd learn it. So that way, when I did get the chance to play with them, I'm like, hey, how do you know that song? You know, I love your music, and I learned your repertoire. And when I first started to play with Frank Vignola, he gave me the gig, and in 2 weeks, I learned 34, not only the tunes, but I learned the arrangement. So he was really impressed. So from that first gig, I had the gig. You know, for forever, because he saw how much drive I had and how much I did my homework.
You'll hear stories about this all the time. You'll read interviews with people. You'll read about how Vincent Herring, when he was a teenager, wanted so badly to play with Nat Adderley that he memorized the whole book of Nat and Cannonball tunes, and did the same thing, just to impress the hell out of Nat Adderley, and became a member of his band at the age of 19 or 20. You'll hear countless stories about musicians who did this, where they just decided, I want that gig, and then they approached that repertoire. Here in New Orleans, you have opportunities that a lot of people in most places in the United States and abroad don't actually have. You can actually find people your age or older musicians. You can find many people to play with. And my experience when I moved here in '94 isn't much different than it is now. It's a very open scene. Cats are pretty open to letting you sit in and do things. But I like Vinny's take on it. It's just embarrassing not to know tunes you thought were standard tunes. But now it's a little trickier, isn't it? It's everybody's kind of got their own scene. But his solution to that was just working with as many different types of groups as you talked about. Let's go back to some practical things. Let's go back to some of those more embarrassing moments, not to relive anything, really. Well, what were some other kind of watershed moments of like, here's something that I need to address as it happened on either a gig or...
Yeah, well, it actually happened to me recently, actually a few months ago, Autumn in New York, which I'm from New York, it's autumn, I should know Autumn in New York. The singer called it in a different key, and I haven't played it for a year, and I totally got so screwed up. The bass player was on the other side of the stage, so I couldn't even have him help me, and I just felt so lost. So when I got home, I made sure that I played Autumn in New York in all the keys. I learned the melody, played chord melodies, and I just sat with Autumn in New York for at least an hour.
Let's talk about that for a minute. What are some ways, I'm sure you didn't actually have it and look at it in 12 keys or, transpose. You must have some shortcuts and things that you do to kind of make sure that you're able to...
I listen to Ella Fitzgerald's version of it, and I listen to...
Which is going to be in one key, it's not...
Yeah, so I would learn that, I'd learn the melody that she's singing, I would learn the harmony, and then...
Play the tune real quick for them?
Sure. Wait, you want to play with me?
Good.
I hope I remember it.
out a lot. So, right then, I actually I don't know, I mean, is B flat the normal key? Is that what we just did?
Yeah, that's
Okay,
it.
we're just a B flat? All I needed to hear was the first note of the melody. In fact, for me, telling me what key the tune is in helps me very little. You have to actually, what helps me a lot more is you tell me what note to start on. And that's just me. Because I don't actually, if you tell me the tune is in A, it doesn't mean anything because I actually really have to think for a minute that the first note is the 6 or 13, right? Or third. Going down to C sharps. So I'd have to really think about it. Plus transposing instruments. This is like, well, then I've got to make the step. Whereas if he just plays the first note, then I'm good. You just start somewhere else on the night because it's all the same to him. He just moves up and down. What's my first note? Just pick a note. Any note. Go ahead. So there, it doesn't really matter because all I'm paying attention to are the relationships of the phrases. I know that the next one starts up. I know at some point it goes up a fourth. Right? But now I want Vinny to talk a little bit about how he's memorizing these tunes because he's not obviously memorizing the chord progression in every key. What are you doing?
Right, I'm thinking, I like numbers. I like math, so I think of it as a number system. Like you got the 1, 2, 3, you know, the degrees of the scale. So it starts on, so you're playing 1, 2, 5 pretty much, and then it goes to the well, I think of the tonal center where it's going to go to. So now it's going to the 2. And now it goes to the flat 3 of B flat, and now we're in F minor. I'm also thinking of the relationship between the keys. So, you know, C minor. So now I just went a 2-5 to a half step up. You know, I kind of think of it like that instead of actually memorizing the chord progression in every key. That's kind of a difficult tune to just think of it like that. So you may want to run it through a couple times so you get it. But a tune like, let's say, All of Me, like that's really simple. You know, you could think of that as a numbers tune and just transpose to any key.
That's a great idea. Let's get Anna up here for a second. And Anna is sitting in, or maybe it's actually her gig, and Vinny just showed up because her guitar player got sick, and Vinny's going to come in. He doesn't know anything about her keys or about anything. Let's just give an example. Let's just say that, for example, let's just say she's coming in to sit on a gig, and she doesn't know her keys either. Let's just say she just can sing. So let's just say she can just sing the note that she wants to start on, right? So it's going to be, Anna's going to come in, she's sitting in, and she says, hey, I'd love to sing All of Me with you guys. And Vinny says, well, what's your key? And Anna says, well, I don't know, but I start here. Sing where he was in All of Me.
All of Me.
And so Vinny finds it on his guitar, okay, and that tells him his key, right? That sounds really simple. But now he's got to go back to his knowledge of the tune, and instead of, I don't actually know what key you're in, but he knows the function. He knows it starts on the tonic, and then it goes to the submediant dominant, right? The dominant on submediant, or the 3. It cycles back around, right? So he's thinking about those relationships more than he's thinking, oh, well, now I'm in this key, which is, what key is it? I'm just curious.
We're going to do G.
Okay, he's not going, okay, G, and then I have to play B7, and then he's not thinking that. He's thinking function, right? So then they're gonna, here they go. Here's us, here's our band, singing in. Now, let's get to the next part. Usually, that's my personal rule, the person who starts the song, or chooses the song, picks the tempo. Why? For me, it just means that they chose that song. It means they got some vague preconception about how they want the song to be done. So I figure, let them choose the tempo. So that's just my rule. So Anna's going to set the tempo. And is there going to be a discussion about how you're going to start the tune? How do you like it?
Usually you can start with a 165.
165, okay.
Intro.
Great.
Do you want to set it up?
What's another way to do it?
How about the last 8?
There's another way to do it. What's another way?
How about we just start right on it?
There you go.
So, no, that's it.
Are you prepared? Are you prepared? Now that you've got the key, now that you've got the tune, are you prepared to go to the last 8? And, you know, as soon as someone starts snapping off the tempo, are you prepared to do a 1-6-2-5 in that key? Are you prepared to make something else that's not related to it? Are you prepared to play the verse? Are you prepared to go right on it? All these things are things that you kind of, eventually you figure out.
Yeah.
Here we go. All of me. We'll
You
get
should just start right on it.
okay. Oh, this is side start.
1, 2, 1, 2. All of me. Why not take all of you?
Can't you see I'm no good, dear, without you? Take my lips, I don't wanna lose them. Oh, take my arms, I'll never use them. Your goodbyes left me with eyes that cry.
Let's get straight to the end. Here we go.
How can I go on, dear, without you? You took the best, so why not take the rest? And baby, take all of me, 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 me. Oh baby, please, take all of me.
Very organic, very organic. Nothing atypical about the ending. But let's just talk about the mental process. Let's just talk really quickly about the communication that has to happen. Because one of the things that I feel almost a need to impress upon you, because you have two situations, right? In this music, you have situations where you get to rehearse, and you have situations where you don't. Improvisation. What does the word actually mean? No, it doesn't mean to improve something, although it sounds like the same word. What does the word improvisation actually mean?
Spontaneously create.
Spontaneous creation.
Right? So prova or provare comes from Latin, right? To try, so an im is basically not. So something improvised is something not tried before. That's all simple as it is. So yeah, spontaneity it implies that. Improve is actually a totally different root. That's actually where you're actually putting truth, prova, into something. So it's a kind of a false friend. But if you are in a situation where you're improvising, you don't have those same expectations. If it's something where it's been rehearsed, let's talk about that. Let's talk about that just for a minute. We'll backtrack. We'll come back to the improvising part and how they communicated with each other in an improvisational setting where they're not working together. So it's the performance is improvised in the sense that they haven't done it together before. Let's go back to the rehearsal situation. Let's talk about the things that you would do as a professional that kind of put you on the right track to make sure that you remember the shit that you rehearsed.
Well, to remember what I rehearsed, I would definitely go through it in my mind before the gig and work it out. Maybe I'd even write it out. And when you write something out, it's more internalized. And I would, during sound check, maybe run through something, try to refresh my memory, like what we did yesterday. We rehearsed yesterday in the afternoon. We got together this morning, so now it's like.
Yeah, and I took a lot of notes.
We're internalizing that.
Oh, that's a great word. What do you mean by internalizing? Just from your point of view.
Just so that you don't have to really think about it so much.
Here's what happens. Your brain has two parts. The conscious part that keeps score. It knows when something's right or wrong. And then there's the unconscious part. It has no idea about what's right or wrong. Right? You understand? It's like it only remembers. The unconscious part only remembers what it's done, what you've done before. So if you practice something 10 times and you screw it up twice of those 10 times, your conscious mind knows that you did it 8 times right and 2 times wrong. Your unconscious mind, which is usually where we are when we're up on a stage, when we're really concentrating on something in the practice room, we're cool. We're on that side. We know how to make it right. We know how to make it wrong. But when you're back in your unconscious mind, guess what the odds are that you're going to play it correctly? Having done it 10 times, 8 terms correctly, and 2 times less than correctly. Guess what your odds are when
4 out of 5.
when you're in the fire of the moment.
Math, you know? Survey of mathematics.
What are the odds? The odds of you getting it right are about 80%. You understand what I'm saying? If you've rehearsed something 100 times and 30 times you actually haven't, done it right, the odds of you doing it right in a performance where your conscious mind isn't able to really concentrate, you get up there, what happens? You get up there, you're like, wow, all of a sudden we're setting up differently than we did in rehearsal. I can't see everybody. Oh, the light's in my eyes. Oh, the microphone sucks. Oh, the sound coming out of the monitor's not right. Oh, I wonder if my parents found a parking spot. Whatever you're thinking about. My girlfriend, I wonder if she's here yet. Whatever you're thinking about. Oh, my socks don't match. Crap. Well, that is taking away. Just teasing my wife. That is taking away your ability to consciously concentrate on what you're doing. So the only way that you can increase the odds when your unconscious mind is at work is by a lot of repetition and just cheat sheets. Your piece of music is a cheat sheet. Having a little thing, knowing what key you're going to start in, knowing how the intro is going to start, knowing who starts the tune, whatever. Down to as much detail as you want or don't want. Those are the tools that you need. Otherwise, your odds are exactly that. They're the number of times that you did it the way you wanted to versus the number of times you did it. You follow? Anyway, so back to let's circle back to. So that's the rehearsal stuff. There's no reason to write stuff down. And Vinny, what you were recording, you had a recording device at the house. What was that, like on GoPro or audio? What was that you brought?
Yeah, well, actually, I was using my phone, just on the phone. You just have a the audio device I had at my house was the video camera.
Oh, okay. So
which I use for when I go fly. I videotape. But I use my phone. I just sit down. Everybody's got a phone, right? Everybody's got one of those phones with the big screens that they. So yeah, he's got one. So so he's recording the session right now.
If you're not using the simplest tools that you always have in your pocket, you're using them for social media, you're using them 9 times a day, you're texting, doing all this. Use it to take voice memos, record your rehearsals, record every rehearsal, record your practice sessions, anything that's going to be like, oh, well, that's not turning out, that's not exactly how I thought it was sounding. Or hey, whoa, that's pretty cool. We're keeping that. We're doing that next time. Mm-hmm. Anything, it's a tool. It's always there. It's not like the good old days when you had to have a Walkman tape recorder and fast forward to the parts where you want.
Yeah, it's such a valuable tool. The technology is amazing that you have all this in your pocket. That you got your tuner, you got your metronome, you got a recording device. You can even look at a lead sheet. Those iReal charts that most of them aren't even correct.
Thank God they're ending. Let's go back to the All of Me and how you decided to end the tune. And tell me what you heard that lets you know what was happening and how you knew.
Well, when it got to the end, I was thinking, well, she could either end it right on the downbeat, and I could play something, to kind of give it closure, or I could wait to hear what she's going to do. I heard that she went up with the melody, so I could tell that maybe she wanted some kind of turnaround. And I was just listening to her, and
What did you actually hear that telegraphed that idea?
Well, I heard that I waited a little bit. I was about to go to the one chord, but then I heard you go to a higher note. Went down like that, so I know that you're not ready to end the tune yet.
So horn players, vocalists, basically, if you're in charge of the melody, there are things that you can do that you can actually embellish melody, and you can create. There can be harmonic implications to what you're doing that communicate to your rhythm section what you're going to do, right? So what keep you doing in G? That note of the D natural has harmonic implications depending on how you play. Whereas if I go, with 5-1, it's a very cadential embellishment of the melody that implies that we are ending, right? So it's the vocabulary for not only knowing how to imply harmonies. Let's try another one. Just So there, I implied the 5-4 to say, oh, we're going to go back to the 4 chord, right?
Yeah, and I caught it. I didn't hear it right away, but then I'm like, oh, he's at the 4.
Now, as a rhythm player, how do you keep the groove going while you know you actually have to pause to wait for that information to tell you what to do next?
Well, I'm always keeping the right hand going, because there's always that rhythm going. There you go. So I'm waiting. What does he play? Oh.
So there it is. You get the little chromatic washboard. There is just a little scratchy scratch. There's no implications. And then as a rhythm section, you can lead it as well. A bass player, you might find a note that could be, if I actually just go, if I hit the 5 of the chord, it doesn't have implications of being cadential. It could actually go different places, right? So these are items of vocabulary that you just learned from listening to other people. And Anna did a good job of telegraphing that she was going to kind of boot that last part, and then Vinny created the cadential material, right, with a little walk down. How do the one? I'll take all of me.
Sure. Oh, what I did when okay.
Do another. A different one. So your choices are going to be based on reacting to what the other people are doing, but it's a lot of vocabulary, right? Was there a process that you did at some point where you're just like, I'm just going to learn a lot of, how many, at what point did you decide you were going to develop vocabulary for starting songs, ending songs?
Well, always learning the last 8 is good, and just 1, 6, 2, 5s. Like I would, just as a good practice, just take a 1, 6, 2, like G, E7, A minor, D7. Then you're in the tune. Just any way that you could get around it.
So for your rhythm players, that the whole chord melody thing becomes really important because he had that beautiful sequence. So it wasn't just right.
That's nice too.
It was 1, 2, 3, 4. But he did a chord melody, and so and it had rhythm. There was a rhythmic thing too, right? That he repeated. So your options to embellish even that 1, 6, 2, 5. You can practice that all day.
Yeah, and I try to make it as simple to hear as possible because the singer is going to want to come in. You're going to want to set her up right, so she's not confused. Oh, what's the key? You got to make this stuff clear. So I just
Let's do another scenario. You are actually the sub. You've just been called at the last minute because someone fell through a manhole grate, and you hop on down to the gig, and there you are. Anna's got a tune list for you. She's going to throw a bunch of charts up at you. Oh, you've even got some. Throw charts.
see, this is real life, right?
I don't know.
So I'd say, okay, what tunes can we do? All
We're
right.
always doing this. Let's talk about chart preparation for a minute. Let's talk about your responsibility when you're preparing charts that you're going to rehearse with your group or that you're going to put in front of musicians with the bandstand. Your responsibility is pretty simple. Your responsibility is only to make a chart that someone can read and make you sound good. Make you sound good. You want to give them, you want to make their job, which is making you sound good, as easy as possible. What does that mean? Standard nomenclature. We now have chord spellings. You know, there is some agreement out there on it, and there's a lot of people that have lots of arguments about it. But either way, make sure you know. Chord quality, big one. Big one. Chord qualities make a huge difference. Vinny, when it comes to chord quality, what do you see when you just see, if you just see very simple chords and letter names for chords? What are you thinking? How are you knowing your freedom to embellish or not? Just even the simplest chord.
If I see like a G major, it could be, I could play a G major 7, I could play a G dominant 7.
What's going to help you make those decisions?
Based on the melody, what the melody's doing.
If you don't know the melody, it's going to be a little bit harder to do that.
So then I would stay away from any extensions. I would just play, or just, a simple G major. I might play a G6, this voicing, or G major. Or maybe I'll play this voicing so I know I'm away from it. I'll just play the triad.
Wow. Have you ever heard triad sound so beautiful?
With the fifth in the root. In the bass. So learning your inversions.
What tune did you choose? I'm just curious. Okay.
Oui, oui.
Allez-y. Allons-y. Vas-y.
Ce soir, le vent frappe à ma porte, me parle des amours mortes, devant le vent qui s'éteint. Ce soir, c'est une chanson d'automne, dans la maison qui frissonne, et je pense aux jours lointains. Que reste-t-il de notre amour? Que reste-t-il de ces beaux jours? Une photo, vieille photo de ma jeunesse. Que reste-t-il des billets doux, des mois d'avril, des rendez-vous? Un souvenir que me poursuit sans cesse. Belle volée, cheveux au vent, baisers volés, rêve mouvant. Que reste-t-il de ces jours-là? Dis-le-moi. Un petit village, un vieux clocher, un paysage si bien caché. Et dans un nuage, le cher visage de mon passé.
let's talk about a couple of things that happened in that performance that you need to be able to have at your command also. Energy, for instance, and then there's also other things. Sometimes, you ever had a conversation with someone that didn't speak your language? Like literally didn't speak your language? Someone comes up to you and they're maybe frantically, maybe they're in French, and they're frantically explaining something to you. You can't really understand what they're saying. But what do you recognize? That they're doing it frantically, right? It's energy. There's something they're communicating. There's urgency, there's emergency happening, or maybe they're angry. So there's an emotional song, there's an emotional pitch to what they're doing, even if you don't understand the words coming out of their mouth, right? Or their eyes are telling you something. If they're going, and they're pointing at that, you don't need to understand that they're telling you that there's something about to fall on your head. It's the same thing up here in the bandstand. And Vinny's been in many situations where basically the energy of somebody's body language or eye contact or hand signal tells them exactly what needs to happen. How did you know that I was only taking half a punch?
You gave me a look, you kind of
gave a little bit of
passed it to me.
And there was also really recessive energy at the end of my 16 bars, right? There wasn't energy initiating that I was going to go into the bridge. There was actually recessive energy saying, now I kind of went to the 5, which is very kind of harmonically ambiguous, and made eye contact. I mean, this seems really simple, but at the same time, I mean, it's vocabulary that you need to have at your command. You need to actually know how to kind of end your half chorus in a way that's musically rewarding, but also communicates that it's going to go somewhere else then, right?
And also knowing the tune well enough so you're not thinking like, oh, what am I playing? You can't be so much into what you're doing.
Right.
You have to be able to take in external.
How did Anna let you know that she was going to go back to the minutes in the beginning?
Oh, she actually said bridge.
She mouthed and whispered bridge, and she did this.
And then I kind of, because I started to actually go back to the first day, and then I caught myself, and I'm like, oh wait, the bridge starts on the 4 chord, so I gave her a quick.
Ironically, we were just in a situation about 2 hours ago where the person did this, and it meant they wanted us to go back to the verse. Mm-hmm. Right?
Yeah.
Remember? So I mean, there's not like a thing. It's just. But that was a blues, so there wasn't like a middle of the tune to go to. So it was kind of like...
It's like, okay, this obviously means that we're going to something else. And then
pat their head, rub their stomach, or swallow. But all of these things, and as your groups, you can invent your own vocabulary for this communication, right? But it's just so important to kind of have that on your radar, because
Evan, talk about that. That's a good point, because I think that just for the people that don't know, I mean, just kind of give some typical hand signs that you see in the bandstand. So also for changing key.
So
like,
in New Orleans, because it was the brass bands were the paradigm, key signatures were actually given in the up position. So this is actually B flat, F, right? I don't think they played in sharp. The bands didn't really typically play in sharp keys. Now, on the bandstand, it can go the other direction, because you're not trying to raise your hand so that all the musicians behind you can see what you're holding up, right? Or there would have been a call. Now, we can do for key signatures, we can do down for flats, up for sharps, right? So we can do, what key is this? 2 sharps.
2 sharps.
D.
Yeah. What key is this? What key is this? Right? Okay, what key is this?
Yeah.
Right, okay, what is this?
That's a modulation.
That's a modulation from
F to F.
F to G. Great. What's this?
A flat.
A modulation from A flat to B flat, right? So there's something that you'll see a lot. For me, actually, because I don't want people to get confused with verse and chorus, I usually don't do this for verse, even though it's a V. I actually usually do this for verse, because it's sort of a V, but it's not, can't be confused with a modulation to the key of T. That's what I do for verse. If it's actually appropriate. What does this usually mean? Yeah, full stop. There you go. We're going home. Taking it out.
Yeah.
Taking it out.
It's really some horn players actually do stomp their feet because they got the horn in their mouth.
That's right. So in New Orleans, I did that today, didn't I? I had to stomp off a tune because I had to play at the beginning of it. So I can't go 1, 2, 1, 2, th. I'll put my teeth out. So you should just. Right? So some other. What's this?
Head.
Yeah, go to the top of the tune or whatever. Right? What might this be?
Keep going.
Yeah. Turn around. Keep
Turn around, vamp, right? Vamp. And you can even make up your own. What are some you've seen, Steve?
Those are typical ones, you know. But I think some people get confused with the up and down sonics because I mean, it's logical to think that if you point up, it's sharp and this is flat.
Yeah, because in New York it's actually opposite. Like when people do down, it's actually sharp.
No, get out of here.
Because up is so commonly flat, you know.
I did not know that.
Yeah.
I didn't know that. Wow. Okay.
And usually they'll just say, okay, we're playing in 2, you know, we're playing in 4, you know, that's, you know, so then they obviously know that that's flat.
So what do you do when the band leader is trying to talk to you on the bandstand in a song and you can't hear them?
Wow. Why wouldn't you be able to hear
a
them?
lot because you're in the middle of a song and you're playing something and they just turn around and they're like,
Yeah. Probably not the most effective communication strategy. Why wouldn't it be the most effective communication strategy to actually try to talk to somebody while the music's going on?
because they can't hear them because I'm playing drums.
One, they can't hear. What else gets lost in a situation like that?
The time.
Was that?
The music.
Yeah, I mean, what is that for the audience, right? So I've seen Latin. I've seen the Latin percussionists. Well, actually, as long as they can reach the bongo player next to them, they can actually tap out a rhythm that they're going to do for a cadence or a riff. I've seen that happen a lot.
Yeah, that's what a lot of horn players do too. Like if they do a shout chorus, they'll like tap out the rhythm of the shout chorus, and then hopefully they hit the right notes. You know, but at least they got the rhythm, so you know at least they be together that way. And also endings.
So I think your question is great. It kind of depends on what's being communicated and what the urgency is. Last night at the gig, I decided, you know what? We're kind of at a volume level. It's like, I know the arrangement says we should go back to the violin playing the melody, but you know what? That's going to be so abrupt because we're kind of here and it's going to go down. So I think I said just enough words to Claire. I said, what did I say, Claire? I don't remember what I said exactly. I think I just said, I'll take the first half, you take the second half, something like that. It was something really simple. So the simpler you make it, the better it is. You know, so I can't think of exactly. I don't know. That's a tricky one. The last thing I want a band leader to do is try to actually talk to me while I'm playing. So if they haven't come up with a way to communicate what they want through the music, then maybe that's just not the most effective way to communicate.
You feel that something is going to happen. You feel the energy, so just keep your ears open, and maybe when in doubt, lay out for a second. If like the downbeat comes and you're not really sure, lay out for the first beat and try to hear what's
I'll say
happen.
in general, I'll say one thing. There's absolutely nothing wrong with saying I didn't hear you. There's absolutely nothing wrong with saying I didn't hear what tune that is, or saying no, I don't know that tune. What doesn't work very well is to pretend that you heard them, or pretend that you know a tune that you don't. There's absolutely nothing wrong with saying, yeah, I don't know the melody of that tune. I say it all the time. But what's going to happen if they call a tune and I just sort of nod and go, oh yeah, okay, sure, whatever. You know?
Then you're setting up the whole band for a train wreck.
Yeah. Absolutely nothing wrong with saying, it's too loud, I can't hear you. Nothing wrong with that. Figure out a way to communicate with sign language. I have no idea what you're saying to me. Which could, it could look kind of passive aggressive. It could just as easily be. But there's ways. That's a good question, though. That's a good question.
feel like it happens more the louder the music is, which is also the less likely that you're gonna be able to hear them, the more likely that they're trying to shout something.
Sure. Back in the day, the jazz bands, when they would get going, the drummer could actually hit the cowbell 2 times to indicate that there was a double ending. The band leader could even go, and that might mean a double ending, right? I mean, so there was a vocabulary for those things while the band was playing. You can use body language to indicate that you want everything to be dynamic, soft, softer. You can do this, which means play it so soft that you can hear the dancer's feet shuffling. Whatever. There was every band had a different kind of thing, and it would come from sometimes it would come from the band leader, the trumpet player. Sometimes it would come from the drummer. Have you been in a situation where someone communicates something and you had no idea what they meant?
Yeah, that does happen, but more often people communicate, and I do know what it means. Like in Vince Giordano's band, they do a lot of that. Like if the drummer will hit the cowbell, that actually means that we're not going to take the repeat. We're going to go straight through.
See, every band's got their own thing.
Yeah, so they organize it in a way so that they sound like professionals, so that nobody's yelling across the bandstand at everybody. So it's good to have a plan like that.
We got time for some questions for Vinny about more questions about the communication thing, or thank Anna for helping us out and going us through some.
Yeah, thanks. Yes.
I have a question, Mike. So you talked about a lot about like what people like to hear from you. Like, what do you like hearing from the other members of the rhythm section? I mean, especially the drummer, I guess.
Drummer, I like to hear. Well, I like brushes. I like it to be light. I don't like to hear the cymbal in my ear. I like it to be really like. There's only a few drummers in New York that I really enjoy playing with, and they just have so much fun, just keeping good time, and it's light and dynamic, and you just hear.
Holy crap! Did you just hear that? How many drummers do you think there are in New York?
Too many.
There's a lot of drummers, but it takes a really good drummer to be better than no drummer at all.
Wow! There it is. There it is.
Really, because a drummer can really destroy not only a tune, but the whole vibe of everything. It makes a difference. Like, is this gig going to be fun? Who's on drums? It really, you got to be so sensitive to everything that's going on. So that's what I love about the drummers that I play with, is their sensitivity. I don't care what they do, their solos or anything. Most drummers that play solos, I'm lost, because they're trying to do so much, I don't even know where beat 1 is. I like people that really make it clear and make it swing and play light and hear everything else. Yes?
I guess the same question, but for bass players.
Bass players, I like it like swinging. I love playing with bass players that don't use an amp.
You have your bass here? Real quick? How far away is it?
It's across the hall. You guys?
Real quick. Because we can talk about that, because I mean, quarter note isn't always a quarter note, is it? Right? So let's talk about that for a minute. How does a rhythm section that hasn't worked together decide where the point of the time is going to be? Right? If you think about the beat as a big circle, and they're the smack dab in the middle, the center of the beat. Well, I mean, Vinny can actually choose to be on one side or another. We all know that basically if you're on the back side of the beat, it can communicate a feeling of relaxation, right? Or you can be on the front side, which can generate a feeling of excitement. A lot of the kind of hot club type groups,
Yeah,
would you say that
they were on top.
Yeah. And so that relationship where the quarter note is between the drummers, or between the other rhythm guitar player, or between the bass player, I mean, it's something that has to be kind of negotiated. I mean, what does that negotiation look like in your experience?
In my experience, it usually happens from the first song. I think he's going to put the beat, and I'm going to put it where it feels good, and the rest of the band is happy because we're together.
Is it your band and Vinny's you're gonna call the tune, or are you sitting with Vinny?
I don't know. I mean, I guess the situation's a little bit harder when it's Vinny's band and he calls a tune I'm not as aware of Or like,
Well, let's try that then.
Yeah.
Let's try that. Vinny wants to play Limehouse Blues with you, all right? He's gonna count the tune on, all right?
oh, wow, don't.
Oh, okay, now, pick one you know, pick one you can work on. Like an old standard like those kind of, just a standard.
Wow.
Something
Mine's
super popular.
blank. We can just do it.
You can just do blues, that's great.
Okay,
That's great. Now,
B flat.
Yeah, sure.
now, we'll get it started, and we'll talk about what that communication looks like and how he's going to communicate with his eyes on this playing that he wants you to do something different. See if you can kind of follow his body language and tell me what he wants to do.
Okay, you want to give an intro?
I mean, I can. Sure.
Set it up.
Do you
Well,
have
now, Vinny, this is your
melody in
band. So
Oh, this is my
your
band.
band. You're gonna
It's your
come up
band.
with
But
it.
what if I want him to set it up?
mind? Do you have a melody? Do you have one in mind?
Great question, right? Even though it's just the blues, it's an excellent question. Probably one of the most important questions.
Sure, I'll play something. Yeah, it's just the blues, right? So,
Okay.
but you like a medium tempo blues.
Okay, sure.
Very helpful information to have, medium tempo, right? Very helpful
Yeah.
information to have. Great. Just because we don't have a lot of time. Now, what are some ways that Vinny could have expressed to you whether he wanted you to play in 2 or 4, for example? Or what did you hear that made you choose to go into 40? Because you did your intro with a 2 feel.
Yeah.
And then you started swinging.
I don't know. I guess he was the way he was moving his body. I guess it felt like he wanted it to like kind of.
Right.
pick
He
up
also,
a
at
little
some
bit.
point, he said to do this, which meant to go
Yeah.
along. But he also did it in such a way that it was like, okay, all right.
Yeah, it kind of had like a 4 feel to the.
So you wanted
I don't
to.
know.
Now, if it was just playing rhythm, let's talk about that dynamic. You guys are both in the rhythm section. Play another chorus of blues, and he's going to communicate to you when he wants you to change or how he wants you to change. And then how is he going to communicate to you what's going to happen in the last 4 bars of the tune, right?
Okay.
If it wasn't ahead, you knew. What could he do to communicate that it was going to be, straight to the 5 chord instead of, going to the 6 to 2? What are ways that he could communicate that?
Well, I guess it's kind of implied that we're gonna keep going if you kind of look at me and keep. I don't know.
Can you tell by his neck position where he is where he is?
Probably not,
Yeah.
but
You
I
should,
can make an assumption.
Horn players, never a bad thing to actually know. To know just enough about bass or guitar to actually be able to see where they are on their low string, or to see where they are on the bass. Sometimes I can even tell unless I put my horn in my mouth and kind of cheat, I might, which I don't really want to do sometimes, I actually have to watch to see what key we're in. Piano, really easy to see. Guitar, not as easy to see. But at the same time, you can see based on his finger position whether he's in F or B flat. Not a bad thing. Not a bad thing to know how to do. So let's just experiment with that. Vinny's going to communicate non-verbally some things that he wants you to do differently. See if you can make adjustments.
Okay. And one thing, if I wanted to go to the 5, or if I want to go to the 2, or if I wanted to go from the 5 to the 4, I'll probably do something musical that'll lead into that.
Show us what that looks like.
Sure. Okay, let's start right on it.
Okay.
So 1, 2, 1, 2, 3.
there's how a guitar player can really communicate, kind of differences in actually what they're going to do. A little bit harder for us as horn players, but we can do it too, right? 1, 2. Implications that say where we're going, if it's going to go from 4 to 4 minor or 4 to the diminished, right? And the other thing, horn players, always great if you can be consistent. If you do it once, do it the same way the second time. Don't constantly be changing it up, because basically they're like computers. They're going to make a mental note. They're going to make a mental note of that, and they're going to.
Oh, it's going to the minor 4. So okay, so this is the minor.
So don't decide just on a whim that you're going to go to the diminished, because it's like, oh, okay, well, make up your mind. There you go. There you go. But that was very good. You heard when he was going to change it.
It's harder when you were doing it.
Now let's hear. It is a little harder. Let's talk about the time thing. Let's play some rhythm guitar and help communicate whether you want him to move, where you want him to move the point of time. It's more subtle. Just so you can hear the difference.
So 1, 2, 1, 2, 3.
Did you hear that? Feel that shift? Feel that?
So now playing on the quarter notes.
Syncopations can have implications about asking for a certain type of energy from somebody, about where they want to move the quarter notes, right? Because it's an anticipatory event. It's actually causing the energy or momentum to go forward in a certain way and imply that that's where you want the energy to go. It's a vocabulary of energy, really. It's nonverbal, but you can feel it. You can feel the difference. And I think this is probably something super, super important as a member of a rhythm section or as a member of a band to really keep in mind. When you go back to listening to your favorite recordings, or you go back to look at some of your favorite soloists and what they're doing, listen to the relationship that the bass player has with the drummer. Listen to the different relationship that different bass players have with different drummers. Listen to the real nuanced things that happen when you're at a live gig and you're watching somebody sit in. Watch that communication and try to adopt it so that you can have more spontaneous performances, or that when things are going into performance differently than you rehearsed, that you've got some communication happening and that somebody can actually take charge and say, no, here's where we're going to take it. It can happen with dynamics too, can't it?
Mm-hmm. Oh, definitely.
Show us an example of how dynamics might change what you're asking the rhythm section for. What you're asking the bass player to do.
Okay. So 1, 2, 3, 4.
There's a couple more upstrokes. And upstroke, again, it's something that's implying energy. Because now it's something reacting to the downbeat, right? It's actually moving. You felt it, right? You wanted to kind of move the rhythm over. There you go. That answers. That's a great question. Huh? That's the kind of things that you guys need. Those rhythm section players need to be able to have amongst yourselves. What if the time is sagging? What does that look like? You know, what does that communication look like?
Yeah, that looks more like.
There's a wonderful singer in town named Topsy Chapman. I hope you get a chance to hear her. And I've seen Topsy, and I've seen her do this when she's singing, and I figured out at some point she doesn't want the tune to go faster. She's doing this because she's not hearing the right energy from the rhythm section. She wants someone to be just a little bit more on top of the beat. She actually doesn't want it to be faster. So the worst thing that the rhythm section player can do, she wants me to speed up. No, she just wants she wants the point of the time to be just a little bit different than where it is. Fascinating, right? I mean, it took me a long time to figure out, wow, she's maybe they didn't start at her tempo, you know? No, she's actually, her quarter note's the same as what they're doing, it's just a little bit on top of the beat. She's not hearing the energy where she wants to hear it, right? Yeah, and that's great. Vinny, anything else you wanted to share with the cats before we split up? We have Snug Harbor set up in a few minutes.
Just, keep on learning songs. Another thing that Bucky told me, he said, everything that you want to learn about music is in songs. So all the theory and all this, that's great. It's great to learn it, it's great to know it, but really, learn songs. Apply everything that you're going to learn. Put it to songs. Have a vehicle for what you're learning. So if you're learning all these like diminished licks and augmented licks and all this stuff, learn the melodies of the songs and learn the chord changes and play, try to play melodically, but put in your ideas that way. So,
how can they find out more about the educational stuff you've been working on?
They could go to my website. If you could spell my name, you could find me. It's Vinny with a Y. And then Raniolo.
No double letters.
Raniolo. So try to remember that, and you can get it on there. I have some DVDs. We're actually doing a master class on Sunday. Right? Oh wait, no, I'm doing one.
Oh yeah. Is there still space for that one?
Yeah, there's still space for that for guitar players and also for instrumentalists as well if they want to learn some more about the real nitty-gritty of the. We'll be sitting with you for 2 hours going over chord changes and playing tunes.
Nice, excellent. Any more questions before we split?
I just got one question. You have such an expensive guitar there, and it looks you carry this amp with you as well.
I do. I carry.
Yeah, so how do you? How do you travel? How do you travel on commercial airlines?
I try to carry the guitar on, which usually, depending on the size of the plane and how packed it is, they usually let me. And I make sure I'm like the first one at the.
Is it a gig bag or a hard shell?
I use a hard shell case.
Okay.
I had an unfortunate experience traveling with a gig bag. I saw Tommy Emmanuel doing it and traveling all through Australia, and he had his guitar in a gig bag. He's getting it on, saying, "Hey, good day," walking right on. And I'm like, "This is great. I'm gonna do what he's doing." And then I did it for a while, and it worked out great. And then there was one plane where it was just the plane was too small, and I had to put it underneath, and then that was it. A stroller or a wheelchair or something fell on top of it, and it was done. So now I always travel with a hard case. I got insurance on my instruments. And the amp I usually put in my suitcase and I check it. The amp actually has a nice case.
How old is that AER?
I've had it for probably about 9 years now.
They still make one with that profile?
Yeah, they make it with all different kinds of woods and everything, all different types of casing. So AER is a great company. I haven't really had it broke once. I brought it to the shop and they fixed it. And, it was just some.
The first thing he said, which he kind of passed over, super important. If you're traveling with an instrument, give yourself plenty of time. Don't be that person trying to get on the plane late and all the overhead bins are filled, blah, 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 blah. Be early, be polite as be super.
Be very nice. Be very nice. And you're actually, if you check in, you check your bag and everything, then they look at you, they look at your guitar, and they say, you're going to have to check that. You tell them, no, I'm allowed to bring it to the gate. Because a lot of them don't realize, you're allowed to bring it through security, you're allowed to bring it to the gate, and then it's up to the discretion of the flight crew whether or not you're allowed to bring it on. So, just a good fact to know. I actually have Not in this guitar, unfortunately, but in my one of my other guitar cases, I have it printed out where it actually says that. You know, where the regulation
That was
is
actually an
there.
agreement that the musicians union on the national level made an agreement with the airlines, and you can print it out on, I think, from either the FAA website or from the union website. You know, this thing basically says that, just in case.
If the guitar can fit on the plane, it's allowed to go on the plane. You don't have to check it. Anybody who tells you that you have to check the instrument, they're wrong.
Even in different countries?
Different countries are different. There's like, you know, the
Actually,
Ryan
I think the unions, even internationally, I think we actually were the last to kind of come on board with it. The United States was kind of late to that party,
Okay.
because they've been traveling with instruments for, you know, a lot longer than.
Yeah, but some of those cheap airlines, like Ryanair and stuff like that.
Watch the cheap
they're-
airlines, watch the budget airlines. We have one, we were just talking about that today.
Spirit, yeah. we just-
Spirit Airlines, yeah, you're not gonna wanna mess with that, because you're gonna pay more. Some of these airlines, you'll pay more for your baggage, even a backpack, you'll pay more than the ticket cost you.
Yeah.
EasyJet,
Mhm.
Ryanair,
Mhm.
German Wings, what's some other ones?
Aer Lingus.
But, Lingus, budget, you know, all these,
Yeah, because we were looking at, because I'll be back here for Jazz Fest, actually. I'm playing 4 concerts with a band called the Avalon Jazz Band. So if you guys are around for Jazz Fest, come and hang out. We'll be playing some French tunes, some French and gypsy swing. So
bring a different acts from you now.
I think I'll still bring this one. Yeah, because I like this one. The gypsy guitar is, you know, they're one-dimensional. So I like to use this because it, you know, pretty much works for everything.
He's talking about the bag of nails.
Yeah, the Selmer
Bag of
and
nails,
Ferry
bag of nails,
style
Selmer.
guitars. Which, you know, Django is great. I love Django. He is one of my true inspirations. But sometimes, you know, if you have so many of these guys that play and these like bashing on these guitars now that, you know, are designed like Django, it's just like, it's a nightmare. So I like the arch tops. I like flat top acoustics. Flat top acoustics actually make great gypsy jazz guitars, and they're much more versatile. Yes, did you have a question?
Oh, I think you have a CD called Django La Krill, right? Can you talk a little bit about that?
Well, so really quickly, basically, in the 1930s, late 1930s, before the war broke out, Duke Ellington's band made a trip to Europe, and some of the musicians got into the recording studio with Django. Barnaby Gard was the clarinetist, and they made five recordings at a crappy studio in Paris. And on sort of the idea of combining that Creole clarinet of Barnaby Gard, who's from New Orleans originally, he joined Ellington in the 20s, and Django sound, I created a group called Django a la Creole that sort of, it was trying to turn basically a manouche swing group into a New Orleans band. And we also mixed up the rhythms a lot and used a lot of, I guess, you know, the rhythms of the Creole world, which encompassed the clave of Cuba and the Caribbean rhythms, Brazilian rhythms, basically anything, New Orleans rhythms. I was kind of trying to create a little world music project. That's what that was. So it was 2 guitars, clarinet, and bass, so we all fit in one car. So there's an economic.
That's important. When you form your band, can you travel with your band?
That's what the concept of Django a la Creole was. So the kind of the historic foundation was that meeting between Django and Barnaby Gard, and we just kind of built it out.
Give a little plug for your gig tonight. You're playing at Snug.
Well, we're at Snug. It's pretty much sold out, but I mean, I'm sure that there's probably they always save a few seats for walk-ins. Probably in the second.
Who else is playing with you tonight?
Peter Harris and Doug Below will be with us as a quartet, and Vinny has a concert on Saturday at the Mint. Actually, like a little trio concert at the Mint, which I think is 2 o'clock.
That's 2, yeah,
2 o'clock.
yeah.
And you know, his website will have his Jazz Fest schedule and things like that. And,
All right.
So he's a nice guy, really accessible. You can email him if you have questions too. You know, he gives private lessons. And it's been a pleasure talking to you about some of these kind of, I feel like, really practical things that don't get as much consideration as they deserve in these environments. So,
How about a hand for Evan and Vinny?